All right, everybody. Hey, thank you for bearing with us as we were trying to correct a few snafus with the link that went out, and but we do want to welcome you and get started. Thanks for joining us for the town hall meeting regarding the College of Idaho's reopening plan for the fall 2020 semester. My name is Joe Hughes. I'm the director of marketing and communications at the college, and we are recording this session, and we will post it to our YouTube channel. So if those were late coming in, they can catch some of these things later on, or if they weren't able to join us live, it will be posted a little bit later. We do appreciate your time and your patience as we've worked through this incredibly uncertain time with new variables that seem to be presented on a daily basis in your lives and ours here at the College of Idaho. Our leadership team is gathered to answer your questions. We thank you for submitting those questions. You can also submit questions as we go through the town hall, and we will try to get to those questions if they are not similar to the ones that we already have submitted. As we introduce each of our team members, they'll have a few opening comments, and then we'll get to your submitted questions. And so one of our co-presidents, Doug Brigham, is on the line, and he will start us off with a few words. Doug.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'll add my apologies for the delayed start. And the good news is I'll keep my comments even briefer because of that delayed start. But I just want to let everybody know the process we've gone through over the last couple of months. It has been a very consistent process in that everything we have done has started with what is the best, safest way to approach things for our students, for our faculty, and our staff. Every decision we make is grounded on that first and foremost. And with that in mind, you have now seen what we announced a little bit earlier in the week, and why we like this, if that's the right term, is that it really provides the maximum flexibility for our students and our faculty and our staff, and particularly with our focus on students today. It allows those students, if they feel for whatever reason that they need to be on campus, that they have that opportunity. But conversely, if they feel for health reasons or whatever reasons that they're going to be in a better situation to remain remote and be off campus, we give them that flexibility. And then in turn, it gives us the flexibility to pivot during the semester if things do improve, that we can have more of a hybrid model where we can have some classes that are both online and in person, and David will speak to that a little bit later. So please know that with all of that, that's the baseline, and appreciate everybody taking time to be with us, and we look forward to seeing all of you either virtually or in person over the next couple of weeks. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Doug. You just mentioned his name, David Douglas, our Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of the Faculty. Fortunately, you're talking to an audience made up mainly now of people who have done online learning as they did in the spring of last year. But David, give some introductory comments as well.
Thanks, Joe. And hi, everybody. I feel a little like Beelzebub or something. You know, you speak my name and then I appear magically. I'm delighted to have a chance to speak to you and look forward to hearing from you in a few minutes, any of the questions that you're submitting on chat or in other ways. I had in mind saying just a couple of things. First of all, I just want to thank you for all the input you provided late last semester. We sent out the survey of students and also surveyed faculty relative to the experience everybody was having early on, and made some fairly dramatic course corrections, adjustments to what was going on in terms of pedagogy, use of technology as the faculty adjusted, and of course all of you adjusted as well in real time. Many people moving off campus who had previously lived on, and then the faculty. I'm not going to say that some members of the faculty were the equivalent functionally of the flashing 12 on a VCR with technology, but it is the case. I would acknowledge that some faculty members were probably less proficient with using Teams and using even Canvas, than might have been the case. But they've had the remainder of the spring term and all of the summer to come up to full speed. And I want to say something about that. Gosh, they've been working so hard. We have held a series of so-called stone soup sessions, including one that I've just come from a few minutes ago. Pretty much every Friday we hold one. And you may remember remember the parable of stone soup, it's actually one of those curious sociological, anthropological phenomena. This story cuts across cultures. There's a version of it in almost every culture going all the way back to antiquity, and the details change. In some cases, it's soldiers returning from war. In other cases, it's poor beggar people. It goes on down a long list. But the thrust of it is that these folks come into a small town and they're not welcomed warmly, and they're very hungry, and so they start a fire and they put a pot over the fire, and and they put some water in it and throw a big stone into it, and people eventually come out because they're curious what you're doing, and the response is, we're making stone soup, and it's going to be so delicious. It lacks only a carrot to be perfect, and so somebody turns up a carrot, and then it's shy of parsnip. If only we had a little bit of beef, and so it goes. And the point to it is that collectively, when everybody collaborates and kicks in what they own, what they know, that everybody benefits. I'm not sure I wanted to evoke the fact that you had to trick the villagers into contributing, because the faculty have been very forthcoming with their knowledge. But these Friday sessions have been really inspiring because they've quickly moved by I think the kind of low level IT challenges, or like changing the names of things, or working on breakout sessions or this or that, and moved to the deeper and more substantive questions about what are they even trying to accomplish in a class session. This is really pertinent to the one we've just come from. And over the course of the summer, I've seen them work together collectively to really hone their craft in this online format. And I have to even acknowledge that I think there have been some epiphanies that folks, who may have taught for a long time and feel that they've taught very well, they don't phone it in, but they have a lot of confidence in their methodologies and the way they teach. And putting their classes online has really pushed them all the way back to first principles, and to ask those questions again that they might have asked at the very beginning of their career. What outcome are they seeking at the end of the session? Right up to and acknowledging the fact that time, I think we discussed, is interstellar, that time experienced on Teams is very different than time experienced in any other venue. And the last thing that you want to do is have somebody lecture to you unilaterally for an hour or for 90 minutes. It just seems to go on endlessly. So they're coming to those conclusions and coming quickly. They are so enthusiastic to welcome you back, virtually or in person, as the case may be, over the course of this fall semester. So that's really all I had in mind to say, and look forward to any questions you have regarding the academic process.
Great, thank you, David. Alongside David, through this endeavor, as we've been trying to get everything lined up for fall 2020, has been Paul Benyon, our VP of Student Affairs and Dean of Students, who all the students know, and I'm sure many of the parents do. Paul, will you give us a few words on the student life experience as it's looking at this point, still with a few weeks to go?
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. And I guess I just want to echo what Doug and David mentioned, and just thank all of our returning students here and parents, for your patience, your flexibility, your understanding, your collaborative spirit, and most of all, your empathy for other students and the entire situation as we've manage what is really, as we all know, an unprecedented time in our history, and certainly in higher ed. So thank you all for that, and it means a lot. And we're certainly doing everything we can to make sure that we can, as soon as possible, get back to what we know is kind of the central to who we are, right? As a residential liberal arts college, all of your intellectual development is critical, and that won't change. As David just mentioned, in our faculty, they're committed to that. You're going to have a wonderful academic experience, even online. And we've learned a lot of lessons, and we're confident in that. It's especially difficult when we can't come together as a community, though. I mean, that's who we are, right? When we're all together, I think all of us can attest to how much of our development, our identity development and professional, personal, social, spiritual development happens in the course of living together and studying together and working together and learning from one another and benefiting from all the different perspectives. And, that is just such a powerful part of who we are. So that is not lost on us. And so, but to go back to what Doug said at the start, we feel like this is the most prudent course of action, that we're providing an educational experience that we think will rival any out there in this new format. And we are committed to making sure we do everything we can to support you and continue that residential experience and development for those who are living on campus and for those who are online. So we're going to be working interdepartmentally, obviously collaborating with our academic colleagues, your faculty, of course, our student government. We're all committed to making this a year to remember, and not just because it's different, but because it's powerful, and you see a lot of growth there. So I'll stop there and turn it back to Joe. Thanks, Joe.
Great, Paul. Thank you for all the work that you and David and the co-presidents, and then this next person in particular has really put into to try to make this transition as smooth as we can, although nothing about life right now feels smooth. Jen Nelson, of course, our Director of Residence Life and Associate Dean of Student Affairs. Jen, talk a little bit about how things are looking from your end as we're moving into the next few weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And I know everyone said this already, but I just need to echo how much gratitude I have for parents and students that I have talked with, puzzled with, even shed a few tears with, I think, over the last couple of weeks, and just how wonderful those conversations have been and how much I appreciate everybody's flexibility at this point. So thank you so much, really, from the bottom of my heart. So this fall, we're definitely balancing the wellness of our community and our strong belief in living together and the development that comes out of living together, along with really the realities of living through this moment. And so that means housing is optional. You know, it's something that you can choose if you're comfortable with that. We are going to house students in cohort groups as much as possible. So you'll kind of create almost like a household of people that you'll be around for the semester. We have RAs that will be planning lots of virtual programs and then some in-person programs as we move into the semester a little more. And we also have off-campus RAs this year who will be reaching out and acting as community connectors for students who live off campus. And they'll be doing some of those virtual programs for those students as well. So it's a challenge up ahead, but we have some really innovative solutions and some creative solutions, and we're excited about that.
Great, Jen. Thank you. For this next semester, actually maybe 2 semesters to work well, there's some important details that Paul wanted to mention again as well. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I did want to point out, for all of us to move forward through these phases that have been articulated, and we'll talk about more as we go through this town hall, but we're all going to need to do our part, and by all I mean everybody on campus, in our communities, and so we've articulated a Yolk Fam Social Compact, Yolk Pact for short, and it's on our webpage. If you're living on campus or plan to access campus, then these are the behavioral expectations that we'll have for students and employees. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that yet, please do so. It articulates what we know are the empirically supported measures that can keep all of us safe and mitigate the community spread, which is all of our goal here. So there's some nice videos embedded in there, one by our ASCI EC and one by our Res Life staff that I think will kind of give you a sense of kind of what's going on and what to expect on campus. And so please take a look at that. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to give Alan Price a heads up that I'm going to go to Trent here next, actually, because I wanted to, Trent's on the line with us, Trent Rodden, who's the student body president. And since you've been involved with the Yolk Pact, I just wanted you to maybe just talk a little bit about that, since it is vitally important for all students to embrace it, all staff to embrace it, all faculty to embrace it, for this to really work. And we've seen examples of it working throughout the summer. Trent, if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the course of the summer, myself, along with my executive council members, have been working to develop this new social contract and this kind of new normal, as it is. And it's going to be essential and vital for the campus to be up and running in this kind of new world as we see it for all the students to kind of buy into this Yolk pack and to respect your fellow peers and to respect your classmates and your faculty and the staff. And we've been working to make sure that it's feasible as well as substantive in preventing COVID spread and to making sure that we have a proper fall semester going forward. So yeah, it should be a good semester going forward. Excited. Great.
Thank you, Trent. And we've seen some real progress and how this can work. And it takes a lot of buy-in. And if the buy-in is there, it can and will work. But we appreciate your work with us and everyone and your leadership in this regard as well. Let's start. I will mention that as well on the line. He'll be answering a question a little bit later on. But Brian Bava, our Vice President of Enrollment Management, is also on the line with us. So pretty much the entire leadership team is here to be answering some questions. Thank you for the pre-submitted questions. I've grouped them into some categories, 4 of them, one dealing with the reopening plan and the phases, some academic questions that came in, some questions about the finances, and some questions about residence life, and that'll be the order that we'll go through them. So let's get to the questions that have been pre-submitted. The first one was this. It said, I'm just curious if there's been any discussion on moving athletes back onto campus and allowing teams to meet online, train and lift in small groups and distanced and with their masks on. And Regan's not part of the call, but I did send this question to her, and she did write back that we have the athletic department has encouraged coaches to meet and to work with their teams online. The earliest that we would anticipate working in person as coaches and players would be once we achieve phase 3 as a campus. So we've encouraged the coaches to group their teams into smaller pods to work together on conditioning and training, which can be achieved either in person or virtually, with the goal of building into the larger pods as the numbers allow, and then the positive movement goes between the phases. So that was the first question. Sorry you had to get my answer reading it from Regan. But the second question, will the Yolk store be open in person or be available for online orders? I was going to have Doug answer this question. I think the online orders are still open now. I think they've been open all summer.
Yeah, Joe, that is correct. They are, online orders are open, and also the Yolk store will be open, I believe, beginning next week as students start to return to campus. They'll have it open and people can be in there, obviously following the Yolk pack guidelines, so masked up and all of that, but it will be open.
Great. All right, we'll shift over to the academic, some of the academic questions. First question, which we'll send to David Douglas. And this one says, why would I go to C of I online for full price tuition? I didn't pay for online courses, and I feel as though I'm being robbed of a higher standard of education.
Well, what a provocative question. I don't know that I like your tone.
My tone.
Yeah, Joe, let's imagine that. I was talking to you. So I think in fact, it's a great question, an obvious one to ask. I guess I'd probably start by sounding a note you may have heard me say before in Convocation or some other place, one that I feel very deeply. I think it's a seductive error to imagine the educational experience is the thing. That is the quality of the education, like the television that you're buying. It's a consumer product, and you want the highest quality. And if the quality is diminished, it's going to be online. Will it really be the same? And of course, that's not really the point at all. You're the product. The college is not the product. The college is a context in which you have an opportunity to be transformed. And your faculty push and prod and poke and torture you, make you work harder, I hope, than you ever thought you could, but provide enough support for that to be done in, let's say it's a humane way, but in any case, for you to survive and persevere. And of course, on the co-curricular side, very similar experiences, right? A chance for you to, connect, to learn, to expand, to be, use up all your energies in productive ways. What's college is really supposed to be. It's more tantamount to a gymnasium than it is to a consumer product. It doesn't matter how shiny the gym is or how pretty the people are or how much or how little it costs. The real question is, what are you doing? Are you involved in it, engaged in it? Are you transformed? You come out the other end of your time in utilizing it and, as a different person with habits of mind. And I kid you not, I mean, these questions of what does it mean to be an educated person? What does an educated person need to know, to do? Is smart a verb or a noun? I mean, those things keep me up at night as I worry with the faculty about the entire academic experience. So to the point of the question, why would anyone want to pay full tuition price for an experience that might be diminished for them? And even in the kind of left turn fashion that I've described it, I guess you could say, will you be as transformed? Are your chances of transformation as high in an online venue? And again, I have a couple of thoughts about that. It's an empirical question, so I'll acknowledge it, that ultimately you get to say that you will have the experience, that you'll tell us whether it was up to snuff or not. I guess one of the questions I would ask, and for those people for whom, a semester away is the right thing to do, I support and applaud that. So I don't have a vested interest. Of course, I imagine that the college is going to provide, a unique experience of continued development for you. But I also want to say up front that I respect your decision. So to the point, part of the question is, what else are you going to do? Don't let perfection be the enemy of terrific. And in this case, terrific is something we don't fully comprehend. This is an historic moment. The pandemic, nothing like this has happened in our experience in our lifetimes. I've gone back to the archives here at the college, 1918, the Spanish flu epidemic, and read some of the accounts firsthand of people's experience in those times and what happened on campus. And the city of Caldwell approached the campus and asked if we would serve as an infirmary for the sick and the dying. I mean, it was just one of those, horrific, tortured moments that defined a generation. And I don't put too much credibility in that, the old saw that every generation has its catalyzing moment or its defining moment. But I think it's at least worth pointing to. Whatever else happens in your life, this will undoubtedly have been one of those periods, one of those moments that you look back on in time and recall, what you did to get through, what your experience was like. And for my part, I think you should expose yourself in every possible way except to COVID-19 per se. Mm-hmm. That is, to culture, to the responses, to the community, to your faculty. I've invited the faculty to not just do business as usual, even online, but to turn their curriculum as may be possible to this historic moment. And so what we're seeing, for example, one of the chief epidemiologists in the nation, never mind the state, happens also to be an alum of the College of Idaho. That's Dr. Carolyn Buxton Bridges. And she's been advising the college. She sits on the governor's advisory board on COVID. And she said, oh, by the way, I would love to work with some students and faculty members who might be interested in doing original research relative to the pandemic here on campus. And she's not talking necessarily about the spread of COVID to individuals, in a fashion that implies being unsafe, but rather the distribution of vaccines when those become available, the success and challenges of the social compact. And honestly, I don't even know. I mean, what she knows about an epidemiological moment like this. But so there's that. I know that our history department is volunteering in some cases. I talked to Professor Kim, also Associate Dean Kim, who indicates she's going to ask her students to collect firsthand primary data, right? Journals, accounts, experiences that are unfolding right now and that seem, so ubiquitous. Everybody has a perspective on this. Well, in 5 years and 7 years and 20 years, that will not be the case. You'll look back and many, historians will wish they had better firsthand data on which to draw to tell the story of what happened during the pandemic. So it goes. So my point is, yep, it's going to be online. It may turn out to be hybrid because if we move to phase 3, those opportunities to get together in person with social distance and masks and other safety protocols in place will open up. But it's the beginning of a great adventure, as Lou Reed might say. So I don't want to put a happy face on it, but I do want to say, I hope your heart rises in your chest. Mine does. I know the faculty is feeling the same way. This is an enormous challenge, but we have to be as good as that challenge. And I don't think, I don't want to park it on a couch. That's not what I consider to be, my best self in response to this historic moment. I'm not implying that would be so for you. You might have terrific plans to backpack, to find things you can actively do to generate self-reflection and to continue to grow as a person. But I, for my part at least, I think we're going to pull it off. I think it's going to be unique, unprecedented, and I think that you would do well to join us. That's my thinking to this point. Joe.
Very much appreciate that answer, David. The next question, still in your realm. It's specific to a specific program, but I think it can be applied to some other ones that might have the same type of concern. Applied music is required for 3 semesters in the music minor. This student only has 4 semesters left, so postponing that class would be difficult. So the question was, for an applied music class, will the student be allowed on campus for the in-person one-on-one instruction, the part where they're learning to play an instrument for the first time?
Mm-hmm. The unsatisfying answer is it depends. I just met yesterday with Luke Strother, the director of our marching band, with Grant Farmer, who's teaching vocals, and with Paul Moulton, the chair of the music department. And gosh, they had so many creative ideas about how to deal with ensembles and lessons and chorus, and these are all high impact, high activity, personal development, skills development based enterprises. And they really are challenges, as the students among us already know, because they experienced it last spring. Labs equally so, art classes equally so. These are difficult classes to move online because they involve so much personal development that really requires repetition and skills. And so I can't answer specifically because it really depends. I would even throw in as a one illustration. Dr. Databay, one of our distinguished chemists, she is preparing boxes to have sent out to students. And these will literally be materials to enable students to conduct some of the lab work that they need to do for her course at home. And so, that's the range of creativity that our faculty are exercising. In some instances, it may be Sniffy, the virtual rat that you were training to go through mazes. In other cases, it may be that you're able to actually work with your instructor on a one-on-one basis online, like we are right now. In third instances, it may be the case that you'll be stitching together an individual performance, perhaps a choral performance, with 30 other students' performances to achieve a kind of choral collective, and others as well. That is, I'm not able to say in each case because it varies by professor, by instrument, or vocal, and so on down the list. But I can say that the faculty are working really hard to come up with creative, even novel ways of addressing these challenges.
Great, thank you, David. Another question for you. This was an interesting one. The question, I wanted to know how seniors who still have a winter term, which is now a May term, they have a winter term course that is required for them to graduate, are supposed to graduate in April before we even have the May term.
Yeah, I've bumped into this question previously. That is, for those people, to be clear, there is a requirement that you attend a certain number of winter sessions. And for seniors who may not need the credits, they have enough credit, among the various semesters and terms that they've taken in the past, and maybe even credit they brought in, either as transfer or dual enrollment or IB credits. And however it happens, they've ended up with more than sufficient credits. They've met all the requirements for graduation. They just have this one niggly winter requirement still in front of them. To those students, and I cannot say this strongly enough, petition. I just can't conceive of keeping you in the college after you've fulfilled every requirement except that requirement for another month. So in a small way, you've won the lotto, because this means that you can actually be done, if memory serves, by April 24th and get a head start on everybody moving into the job market, postgraduate school, if you're going to, internships, whatever your transition might look like. You'll actually be done considerably before anyone else in the college. So I see a bright future for you, and will do everything I can to ensure that that requirement does not hold you back.
Great, David. I'm gonna stick with you, David, because there was one that came in on the chat that was in your realm specifically. The question was, will the library be open for use through the fall semester?
The answer is absolutely. Like so many other support enterprises on campus, it'll be available to students virtually around the world, wherever they happen to be tuning in from. It's pegged as an academic enterprise, a support enterprise. It's pegged to the academic domain, classes. And if we have the opportunity to go to a hybrid model and welcome some students, whoever happens to live locally or to live on campus, at phase 3, we'll have the opportunity in some instances for classes to be hybrid mixed. People can, in some instances, come in live. Same for the library. So at that point, people will be able to go into the library physically, IRL, and utilize it in person. It's likely to be not full access, because just like in classrooms, we'll have to maintain social distancing and masks. PPEs will have to be worn and so forth. So there'll be some additional pieces. Right now, the plan is to probably limit the overall number of people, just so that we can achieve that de-densification, not have people in big crowds. So those kinds of tweaks, but absolutely, the physical archives, all the materials in the library will be available on the same schedule as we are able to move back to in-person instruction.
Great, David. Thank you. That's the last of the or I guess one of the Q&A questions came in as well. But from the academic standpoint, we're going to shift over now to a financial question / kind of comment that came in that I'm going to ask Doug to weigh in on. And some of these answers to these questions are also in the FAQ that we provided as well. So please access those if you have additional questions maybe didn't get answered. Quite a few of those are listed on the website on the updates page. But this comment says that the person recognizes that we have fixed costs related to infrastructure on campus and need to remain financially viable. But there are programs and events that will not be taking place and students will not be on campus. And as a parent, it stings to and struggles to pay tuition. That there won't be any discount tuition, even though the kids will not be getting the same level of services. Even from an optics point of view, maybe just even a percentage might be preferable for the parent that is posing this and saying that it would go a long way to show that that maybe full price isn't the way to go for, in their term, less than full services. Doug, would you address that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the question, and I tell you, we spent a fair amount of time as a leadership team discussing that issue, and obviously our hearts go immediately to what we can do to help families and students in the most ways possible. But we also, to the questioner's good point, we do have to operate in a fiscally responsible manner. And so I'd say a couple of things. One, we tried with this decision to give families and students options that would be potentially less expensive for them. For instance, a student or family can make the choice to be off campus and live remotely and therefore save money on room and board and things like that. So that's one. The second is over the course of the summer for our returning students, we made funds available and there was some eligibility requirement, but generally FAFSA filing students or families were given dollars from some of the CARES Act money that we got. So I think in general it was $400 to $600 that students received over the summer from the CARES Act, which we hope will help defray some of the costs going into the fall. So we've certainly done a couple of things, and I hope everybody's seen, and we put it in the FAQ, all of the steps the college has gone through proactively to try and reduce our costs so that we're not doing anything more than we absolutely have to. Most of the people on this phone call have taken reductions in pay. We've eliminated positions. We've done everything we can to keep our costs down. And so the short answer is we looked hard at it, but we made the decision to keep tuition where it is. And I would just echo what David Douglas mentioned a few minutes ago. We don't feel like our online education is online that you see at a lot of schools. We think we are still you're still going to be in that very small class of environment that we have. You're not going to be in a classroom with 500 other students online where everybody's muted and you can record it and watch it any time of day. You're going to have classes that you're meeting. Your classes will be meeting at least once a week, if not more, in person at the same time with discussion. Your faculty, your professor is going to know you. You're going to know your professor just like you always have. So we don't think the quality of the education is necessarily going to be lower. Is it going to be different? Yes. But we think the value is very much still there. Joe, can I answer one other question I saw in the chat room as well that came in, and that is, when will a decision be made about the spring semester? And I believe the question was around when will we decide if we'll be in person or online for classes for the spring? And I'll reference back to our phases. So the first part of that decision will be what phase are we in? And right now we are in phase 2 on our schedule, and of course phase 3 allows for a hybrid approach and then on up through the various phases. So as we go through the fall, we'll be monitoring that, and I would say it would not be until late in the fall, once we have a lot more track record and we're closer to the spring semester, that we'll be able to, with confidence, say what our plans are for the spring semester. But we're obviously hopeful that if the fall goes well, we can absolutely be in a spot where we have that possibility of worst case, a hybrid approach, and hopefully more in person.
I think it might have been coming from the same area, Doug. The question was, what is the likelihood of in-person classes this fall? I think it's really hard for us to really judge what that looks like based on how quickly things change. But it's similar to asking about the spring semester, but just in the fall semester in a much more closer time frame.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we hope, and we put the phases in there specifically for that reason. And what you saw is we don't anticipate doing anything earlier than September 1st to have any hybrid options. But David Douglas can certainly echo this. We have a lot of faculty who are chomping at the bit to be in a position to do some kind of hybrid course where they can both have in-person and online students and interact both ways. So we'll do it as soon as we can. Do we think there's a chance? Absolutely. We wouldn't have set that phase and that model up this way if we didn't. But we've got to have everybody responding to our Yolk pack and, you know, wearing their masks, keeping distance, getting outside, doing all those things we've talked about.
Great, Doug. Thank you for that. Before we get to the residence life questions, I am going to circle back to David Douglas. Hopefully he's still, he's not fiddling with the numbers on the VCR, the clock on the VCR in the background, and I think he's hopefully still with us. This does relate to the question, one of the last ones that you answered, and it was a follow-up, and I just want to circle back. What about those seniors who will need the credits from the term in May to graduate? Will they still be able to walk in April?
Absolutely. So seniors who need again, this is part of the regular academic program. So of course you have a right to at the experience of that winter term, even if it happens in May. So absolutely students will be able to walk at graduation, participate in graduation ceremonies, and then finish out the credits that they may need that remain in the opportunity to take those classes in the May term. And similarly, there was a question in the chat, an interesting twist on that. What about students who don't need the credits, but may just want the class? You know, interesting class. They thought they would be able to take it. It's offered in the winter term, so no problem. And in fact, because of that shift to May, they may find themselves having completed their academic requirements and having graduated accidentally before they have a chance to take the class. We're going to figure that out as well. It seems to me that the logic is very clear. You are entitled to that class. That class is something that you should be able to take, and we're not going to take it from you. So it's a little complicated in the sense that typically by the time you've completed all of your degree requirements, you graduate. You know, we can't keep you from graduating, and so it's unclear. I'm working with our registrar's office, Cassandra Heath, and we'll figure out how that's going to happen. You know, as a kind of official record-keeping matter. But I guarantee you, we're not going to take from you the opportunity to finish out that class that you really wanted to take. And I would even mention as a footnote, you know, the January term was always designed as a high-impact opportunity. The faculty members are not supposed to do what they normally do, just more of it. You know, you're not supposed to take a regular class, just a steady diet of it over the month of January. It's really supposed to be designed as an opportunity to do something completely out of the box, something that's different and unusual, high impact, high activity, high engagement. And so this is a chance for the faculty to really rethink that January opportunity now in May as a chance to, you know, warmer weather. I know that Professor Mansfield is going to be teaching a field botany course, like in the session it actually occurs. I know that the folks who teach that, Megan Dixon and Scott Knickerbocker, who teach the Winter Wilderness course, are trying to figure out how they can make this work as a mountain experience in May. And other faculty members who may have taught, you know, more conventional classes are given the opportunity to redesign this, looking at the beginning of the summer with, again, the better weather, the warm temperatures, something that they could, you know, take it on the road, get it outside, really make it novel. So I have high hopes for it, and stay tuned for how we can figure out with you to make sure you have access to it.
Excellent, David. Thank you for that. Let's shift now to some of the residence life, student life questions that came in. So we'll be hearing from Jen and from Paul, and specifically Brian Bava has the answer to this next one because he was asked this in an earlier town hall. So I want to ask him this particular question: will work study be available when we're online?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And the short answer to that question is yes. We're in the process of working with the Financial Aid Office, the CEL, and the Human Resources Office to identify which work study opportunities, college work program opportunities can be done online. And so our hope is that in the next week or so, we'll have kind of that robust list available in Coyote Connections, and doing some outreach to students who've been assigned work study and college work program funds on what options are available to them. So again, yeah, the short answer is yes, but there's a little bit more legwork that we have to do this time around, since not all of those positions are going to be on campus in person, but we're working through it.
Excellent, Brian. Thank you for that. Jen, I'm going to send this next question to you. Came from a parent. If our son does not live on campus as planned, will the costs of room and board be removed from his balance due?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody again. Yes, absolutely. It will be removed. It's a little bit of a process for us. And so we started it today, and we'll be working on it through the weekend and into early next week. But if you opt to live off campus or at home, your current housing and meal plan charge will be removed from your account.
Next question, Jen. Will students living at home still have to purchase a commuter meal plan, or can they opt out entirely? And will they even be allowed on campus to take part of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I know typically we want our students off campus to be able to come onto campus and use our food service here at least a few times a week. This year, given again our goal of physical distancing and really kind of cohorting groups of students together, if you are living off campus, you will not have a meal plan. So we will cancel that. But as we hopefully move into stage 3, and some people can start coming on campus, and we can maybe have some small gatherings again, or you know, carefully thought out gatherings, then there would be an option for students who are off campus to add flex dollars, which you can always do anyway, and then come onto campus and eat that way. So you would just run your card as flex dollars. That was maybe a long answer, but so the short answer is if you're off campus, you will not have a meal plan to start the semester.
Thank you. Actually, that answered a couple of the other questions that I had right after that, because they were related to that. If those students were going to be able to come on campus and utilize that, but that's going to be something that is not available until a later phase. Not
for the first couple weeks, at least, right? And then at that point, again, you could add flex dollars on, and you can do that through the Yolk card portal on self-service, and you can just add dollars on, and it's like $1 to $1, or you could use a debit card.
Okay, that answered another question almost specifically that I had lined up here for you, Jen. So very good. Way to be way on top of things. Here's a question about the living arrangement for the people living on campus. Will there be any kind of priority for suites and singles for people who had suites or singles before the housing and meal plans were canceled?
Yeah, so I did archive all of housing from Room Draw. I have that saved in a document. I know that where you picked housing is so important. I know that's a really important part of College of Idaho housing process, and we put a lot of time and thought into Room Draw every year. Given the circumstances this fall, though, our priority is actually housing cohorts of students together. So good friends, people on teams, first-year students, just groups together that are going to be spending time together. And again, we'll almost act like a household as we get into the fall. And so that group of students will really be your primary social group. And so that is our priority as we're starting to rehouse this weekend. Everybody will be in a single room. I guess there's a couple people that have requested doubles, but really primarily everyone will be in a single room, and we'll house suites, groups of friends or teams, again, cohorts in suites. We'll use those numbers to put people together. We are also paying attention to rate. We had you on the application. If you've already done it, we have you select what type of room by rate that you want, because we want to be sensitive clearly to what is in your budget. So we're also paying attention to that, but those are really, it's the cohort group and rate that we're going to be paying attention to. Again, I do have your options archived though, and if we're able to factor that in, we will. But my priority is the cohort group and the rate, just for safety of everyone.
So just to reemphasize, because a question came in via the chat, that even though there were those originally assigned rooms or picked, selected back in May. That is going to be redone this weekend. The housing assignments are going to be changed up this weekend based on how things have changed in the phase plan and almost everybody being in a single room.
That's correct. Yes, and we're I know spring is a long ways away right now. So again, I have all those archived. I mean, there's a potential we might go back to what happened at Room Draw for spring, but right now we're just focused on fall. We're just going to work on fall housing and housing people together in groups for fall.
Okay. Next question came from a parent. Our student is on an athletic team, and this is fine for Jen or Paul to weigh in on. Our student, again, on an athletic team whose season was postponed to spring. Will he have the option to move back on campus to a single room in the spring if the COVID situation is improved?
I'm hopeful that yes, that's I mean, we're hoping that spring actually will bring lots more students back on campus and that we'll have the capacity for that again. I don't want to make any guarantees at this point. We just don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now or 5 months from now. But at this point, that is our hope, that we will bring students back on campus in spring, more students back.
And then how would the meal plan situation work if he didn't have the meal plan or had a refunded for the fall and was coming back in the spring? Would it just start over again?
Yeah.
There was an additional question concerning that was submitted.
Yeah, we would reassign a meal plan for spring at that point. Okay.
Here's a fun question. Will there be a first day of school photo opportunity?
I love that question. So normally that's actually parent and family relations office that runs that, and I will contact them this afternoon because I think that is a great idea, and we could do a wonderfully physically distanced, maybe with your mask and without your mask, first day of school photos, and keep up that great tradition that was started a few years ago.
Yes,
so thank you, whoever asked that. I love that.
I know that our department, marketing communications, usually sets up the big banner that people stand in front of and we take the photos as often as well and then post them on our Flickr page. And I was thinking the same thing, Jen. Yes, we've got to figure out a way to do this, and also to make one that might be virtual, that people can just take if they're not coming onto campus. They could just put back behind them. That I think that actually our graphic designer Hannah Matson was already working on something that was very similar for that.
Perfect.
Maybe we can get this is Paul Binion, a cardboard cutout of Trent, so everybody can take a picture with the student body president. How about that?
That's great.
Fantastic idea.
There's one says a question for Jen that came in on the chat, and we've gone through actually all the ones that have been submitted. So I do want to try to hit some of these chat questions that have come in, and it was specifically to you, Jen. It said that my son is a football player. We are out of state. Football plans to start slowly in September if given the green light. Can we secure his housing on campus now, but not move him in till later, until once College of Idaho gets to the next stage and football is actually happening? It's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well,
I don't see why not. Oh, what?
Oh, no, I can.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, everyone. Yeah, I don't see why not. We have specified the number that we're kind of looking for on campus with all single rooms, and then I do have spaces reserved for isolation. Should we have students get ill later in the term, which I hope doesn't happen, but we are ready for that. So as long as we have space, I don't know why we couldn't do that. Yeah, absolutely.
There's another question. What are plans to build community with freshmen in particular?
Yeah, so we will be working with our RA staff when they get back on campus next week for this, but we have a whole list of programs, thanks to one of my wonderful staff members, Matt Gear. We have a whole list of programs that we're working on. We have ideas for how to connect, how students can meet other students, freshmen can meet other freshmen just within their hall and cohort group. We're planning for activities outside. We have virtual activities planned. We also are even thinking of things like a student could stand in the hallway and meet the student that's in their dorm room, or in their bedroom, and they could do like a couple questions, like a brief interaction, and then the student moves down to the next room and does the same thing. So we can have Lots of activities and ways to get to know each other while still maintaining physical distancing and really keeping the community safe.
I would just add, Joe's Paul Benyon, two things. One, there is an orientation schedule that is going to be kind of a prolonged orientation. We see it actually kind of happening over the course of the fall semester. And then we probably want to turn over to Trent. I know the student government has a mentoring program and stuff that he might want to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So we actually just got done last night. The executive council and I met, and we worked for, I think, probably about 4 hours getting all the pairings together. So for those parents who are unaware, freshmen were allowed to opt into a program called the Yolk program, which is a mentorship program, which pairs based on personality quizzes that they take incoming freshmen up with seniors and juniors and upperclassmen who have been specified as mentors that I've selected. And so that pairing process just finished last night, and the mentor pairings went out. So your first year students should also be getting to know some upperclassmen and also some of their fellow freshmen through that kind of program that my executive council and I developed.
Great, Trent, thank you. I know one of the things the co-presidents have done to coordinate some mentorship or relationships or even start them or build on them is the Pizza with the Presidents plan, where we would get together with upperclassmen and particularly freshmen would meet with them, and tried some of those virtually in the spring, and those worked really well. And so they will continue to do the virtual Pizza with the Presidents, which works really well because then Doug can't slice the pizza off your plate and like he would in person, but so they will continue that process as well. Another question I wanted to send over to Jen, because the deadline is today for the opting in to try to get on the campus. Do students need to opt out of housing, or is it just opting in for housing?
Students do not need to opt out. We have canceled your housing assignment, so you just opt in. So put an application in if you're interested in living on campus. Please review the frequently asked questions on the website. I mean, as I've said, I'm kind of excited about this, kind of the innovation in this community, but I also know that it's not a good fit for everyone. And so I want students to think about and talk with your families and figure out if this is the right fit for you to come onto campus this fall.
And I know I've heard this number from Paul, but what's the actual number of students that we have room for on campus this fall?
So we have isolation beds reserved, quite a few isolation beds reserved. So and that's a little bit wiggly maybe. So the number on campus is probably between 430 and 450 that we could have beds if we're all single rooms.
This question might be a combo between residence life and academics, but with the local, and I think we had a version of this earlier, but will local students living off campus be allowed on campus to use the library or the study areas across campus, et cetera?
I don't know if David, I'm not sure how the library,
David,
do you want to answer how the library's protocols are working?
Yeah, actually,
yes.
I wrote the answer to that question in the chat. Happy to speak it. The short answer is absolutely. All academic support services will be in place. Some of them will be virtual, and of course in phase 2, which is the phase that we are planning to open in, all instruction is going to be online. So it's really a distance education opening to make sure that everybody's safe at the beginning of the semester. And then of course we'll monitor it very closely to see how that goes, as President Brigham has said. But in terms of library is really, it's an academic support unit. It's pegged to the classes. So it'll be open, available. The full staff is looking forward to helping you, but it will be online. And so it'll be in a virtual medium. And of course, the vast majority of their catalog is online anyway. So you'll have access to all of their resources that you would normally have in an online medium, and they'll be able to help you find things and organize your thinking about your point of inquiry. As always, they're so much more than just reference librarians. They can help you think through the process of inquiry that you really need to undertake and the questions that you're asking. So that's the way it'll open up. When we move to phase 3, just as you'll have the opportunity for those people who are local or who happen to live on campus, they'll have some opportunities for hybrid education, that is some in person. Similarly, the library will open up for in-person use, IRL use, as it were. And that means that there may be, again, social distancing and PPEs worn, but the staff will be in there in person, and you'll be able to go in and utilize those resources in more or less a normal way, plus PPEs and social distance.
Excellent. Speaking of PPE, I see Fred has one behind you there, David, but Albert Einstein interestingly does not.
Well, he holds a position that risk is relative, and as a consequence, he prefers to. Plus, the pipe, it's hard to fit over the pipe. Yeah, so he uses a lot of disinfectant.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Another question, and I'm not sure who can answer this. Hopefully, somebody has been on one of these conversations. Is there any discussion about what graduation might look like for the seniors, considering there's still a long time till that date, but it has been moved. So is there hope for an in-person graduation? I think we are hoping that we can have an in-person graduation, but what's the discussion of what that might look like for the seniors? David.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also yield to President Brigham, not just because he's my boss, but he also may have things to say here. So I'll acknowledge are you kidding? Wildly optimistic about graduation. And that's not just groundless. In fact, the biomedical experts that we're consulting with are fairly optimistic that a vaccine will be available before the end of the calendar year. Now, the bigger question, which I'm proud to say the college has actually been solicited for expertise relative to the ethical dimension. As vaccines do start to roll onto the market, typically these things happen in a situation like this, a pandemic like this. These will often be available as indicated by the state or even the federal government. And so the big question is who gets them first? And of course, you might say, well, the high risk categories, children, people who are older, people who suffer from the comorbidity factors that are listed in the CDC's websites. They've actually engaged the college to provide bioethical medical advice in that regard. So we're able to give back to the community. Not only do we need and benefit from this day-to-day information that's available to us, but we also can feed back to them some of the expertise and analysis of the ethical dimensions of these things. So back to the point of the question. Yeah, we're getting from them a lot of optimism about not just one, but multiple vaccines being available and rolling onto the market later in this calendar year. And then what they do, none among us knows, is the efficacy of those vaccines. And then, the rate at which the production is able to catch up with the actual number of doses needed. So I guess that's my way of saying none of us knows exactly how soon these come to market, when the clinical trials are complete. They're well underway right now. But so there's some uncertainty there about January and February and so forth. But I have great optimism that we'll be able to hold an in-person commencement in the way that we always do, traditionally do, by the time it rolls all the way around, to April and May. We'll see. Maybe events will make a liar of me, but I believe, based on the best information we have available right now, that we'll be able to hold commencement in the quad in person as usual.
Great, David. Thank you for addressing that. I'm going to ask this next question to Paul Benyon, because I know he addressed this at a town hall yesterday. Will students be tested for COVID-19 when entering dorms, or do they need to show up with a negative test?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So we are still requesting students as a recommendation, if they are able to access a test, to do so prior to coming on campus. And our primary rationale with that right now is that even if it just catches a handful of students who may be positive before they travel to campus, so they can quarantine at home and isolate at home, it would be worth it. But this, obviously we understand that depending on where you're at and kind of, it can be difficult to obtain a test if you're asymptomatic. So we can't require it for that reason alone. The CDC also doesn't necessarily recommend it. There's just a lack of study having been done in terms of how effective that is for colleges and universities as everybody moves back to campus. So again, we still think it's a recommendation and encourage everybody to do so, but our focus is really going to be on what we know, the empirically supported measures that limit spread. So wearing the mask and physical distancing, good hygiene, again, that is where our focus is going to be, hence the Yolk Pact. That's ultimately what's going to make a difference. So.
Great. Yes, very good, Paul. Thank you for that. Next question I'd like to send to Trent. Is Greek life going to be active during the fall? Was the question that was posed on the chat.
Yeah, so another great question. Greek life, as with a lot of other student organizations, is a club here on campus, and all clubs this year are going to have to be in accordance with social distancing guidelines. And for the first 2 weeks, officially, we're not going to be having any in-person student events. Greek life is fairly intimate, and from what I've heard, it's going to be fairly limited in what they can do. But I have heard that chapters will be doing digital rushes, digital recruitment strategies, a whole bunch of virtual chapter meetings and stuff like that. But the philanthropy events and the more on-campus and in-person events will be severely limited. So the answer to the question is very simply yes and no. So I guess it's that simple. But yeah, it will be occurring, but in very limited capacity.
Great, Trent, thank you for addressing that. Another question came in about the facilities. Are the gyms going to be open for non-student athletes? Who would like to take a swing at that?
I'll take a swing at it. Yes, but again, it will follow the phases. So in the first phase, just like the library, those sorts of it will not be available. And then as we move into the next stages, phase 3, most likely, then access will be allowed to the gyms.
Great. I am scanning through the rest of the chat as I think we've answered all the questions that came before the last few that I've seen. So I believe we may have exhausted the questions that we had that had been sent previously and the questions that have been coming in via the chat. So I know that there will be more questions. Hopefully you all know that everyone on this video chat is totally accessible. We would love to hear from you for the questions that were unanswered or just not didn't have time to get into this. Again, if you want to share this particular chat with somebody else, it will be posted on our YouTube channel later and publicly, so you can just send the link to anybody who might have wanted to sit in on the session and learn from some of the answers. That will be available a little bit later once we get the record put up onto YouTube. But anyway, I just want to thank everyone for the time, the questions, all of the panelists for the answers. We just appreciate everything that you're all working very hard to try to keep this small, close-knit community, close-knit, and it's still small, but still recognizing that physical distancing and the masking and the hygiene is really going to be so key in maintaining that we can all stay healthy and keep this semester being as best as we can possibly be. I just saw something from Trent that came in and said, can we make sure that the first year students are checking their email? Please, you're going to be coming across a lot of first year students. Make sure they're checking their emails to see all the information. There's going to be a lot of information that's coming through over the next couple of weeks. So please help the new students get that information, and please be checking it yourself. And again, if you have other questions, please contact us directly. And so with that, I think we're going to close up the town hall. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and go Yotes.